On today's show, a flop for the Hawks in their season opener on Wednesday. We'll get into what it means, what it doesn't mean, and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2084 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep at the night here on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. And I want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. That includes places like Apple, Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so please like this video. Also, subscribe, rate, review, comment, all that fun stuff. And be sure to tell your friends and family about the podcast as well. As I said, my name is Brad Rowland. I have been the host of this show for almost 10 years now. In fact, this is the 15th season that started today of me covering the Hawks. It's been a long time. This is actually year 10 of this podcast. It was the beginning of year 10. And not the best start in the world for the Hawks, but I want to introduce myself to any new listeners that might be out there. And for the old listeners and recurring listeners, welcome back to the podcast. We appreciate you being here as always. But look, it was a rough one for the Hawks. 138-118 at home against the Raptors in the home opener, the season opener on Wednesday. And I won't obviously sugarcoat too much here. They came in favored at home. They were the better team on paper against the Raptors. At least they were, 8 or 9 wins better in the projections, according to our good friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. And it was a flop. It really was. I will break down the specifics of the game in a moment, and I always do that in kind of deep dive fashion, both with some big picture, broad takeaways, my more nuanced, like play-by-play analysis, player evaluations, etc. But I just want to open the show by noting two things, basically. And they both can be true at the same time, even if it might take some deep breaths along the way. The first thing is very obvious. This is a very rough performance. It was not good. I am not in any way saying it was. It was not. And they have to improve quite a bit. Everyone after the game said that, from Quinn Snyder to the players. No one was happy. They all understand they played really poorly in this game. That is certainly part of the lead here. The second thing is the first game of the season, second day of season in the entire NBA for a team that made major changes this summer, and weird stuff happens in a one-game sample size anytime in the league. Plus, when it's your first game, I would say it's a high variance night, and that does not excuse it by any means. I'm not saying wipe it away. I'm not saying ignore all of it. I'm not doing that. Again, everyone said the right things after the game. Trae Young said, you don't just flush this one down the toilet. Like you have to keep it in mind and learn from it. That's all the right stuff. But I'm also not going to get terribly worked up. Like there were some people that I was already kind of leaning into this a little bit on social media before recording the podcast. But people having basically playoff level meltdowns, as I mentioned, and that's fine. I get it. Fans are going to be upset with this performance, and I totally understand that. I also cover the team. It's a little bit different than that reaction. But nothing was screaming at me as far as the basketball stuff. Obviously, there's some bad film, and we'll talk about that on the show. But there were veteran players on this team that were pretty bad in this game. But they're veteran players, and I'm not going to wait one game versus their careers for an 8-year veteran player. That's not what's going to happen. They're not suddenly bad basketball players. The team theory just makes sense to me still. They played poorly, and by the way, to Toronto's credit, they played very well, and they ran it down their throat the entire way. So kudos to them, hats to the Raptors. But if you're a new listener, you might be expecting a rant right now. I'm not going to really do that necessarily. There were some process things, and especially in game one, process things are going to bother me more than results things, to be honest with you, because it's one game in October. But I'm sure later on in the year, I'll get bothered by some performances, by some stuff that happens, and that's the nature of the beast. But that won't really be today. And look, I want to say it one more time. This is a very rough performance from the Hawks. And I totally get the anxiety and the frustration and the reactions. I think, broadly speaking, my whole worldview has not changed on the Hawks. If yours has, I think that's an overreaction. I do understand it, but I'm not going to suddenly, somebody asked me, and they were, I think, earnestly asking me, would I still had the projections that I did yesterday on the show? And the answer is yes. Maybe you adjust a half a win down based on just losing a game that you're supposed to win at home. But I don't think that my whole worldview has changed based on this. Look, if this is the way that they play for the next 2 weeks, then yeah, it'll have to change some things. But for now, it's one game, and I'm not saying to ignore it. I'm not going to ignore it either, but it's not one that I'm going to melt down about. So with that out of the way, some broad takeaways and observations from this game at the outset. I would just say this. neither the offense nor the defense were remotely good enough in this game, but I think defensively, that was kind of the side of the floor that got the headlines, that got the attention from Quinn, from the players, and also from my eyeballs and watching this game back before recording the podcast. And by the way, I always do another rewatch before I record the podcast. We'll talk about this later on, but there is an instant reaction show that happens in this same feed. But I always want to do more and look at the numbers and look at the more film and kind of give you the whole picture of these games before I actually record the pod. But defensively, it was really a mess at times. Now, by the end, it was only quote unquote a 122 defensive rating in the game. That's not good, but it's not like utterly disastrous. But that also includes a fourth quarter that was basically entirely garbage time, in which the Raptors scored 28 points and only had a 108 offensive rating in the fourth. So it was much worse than that. The Hawks were allowing about 1.3-ish points per possession in the first three quarters. That is not going to get it done ever. Toronto shot 57% from the floor in the game, including that fourth quarter, and 69% on twos. A lot of pretty good looks around the rim for the Raptors. Here is the most damning stat of all, and if you want to have a meltdown about anything in this game, this is probably the one. The Hawks allowed 86 points in the paint in this game. Now, if you're not an NBA diehard, that is an astronomical number, so much that in checking with both NBA.com and the portal there that's publicly accessible, plus OptaStats and some asking around of people that do this for a living more than I do, I cannot find a game in which the Hawks have allowed 86 points in the paint since at least dating back to 2001, 2002. That's when a lot of the NBA stats kind of got upgraded 24 years ago at this point. But this might be the most that they've ever allowed in a game ever. And over that sample size, barring an NBA issue and stats and data, this is their most points in the paint allowed in any game over that sample size. That's crazy. Now, part of that was good finishing by the Raptors, but part of that, as we'll get into later on, is the transition. And that's the other big number here, is the Hawks allowed 34 fast break points, and they only allowed that many or more 3 times in the previous 3 seasons combined. So basically once per year, they allow 34 fast break points, and that happened today in the opener. They allowed 24% frequency in transition in this game, which is very, very bad. They also, the Raptors ran on steals for sure, which is part of this. The offense was not very good either, but they also ran like crazy on missed shots and rebounds, which is when it starts to get damning for your defense. When you can't get back on missed shots, that is when you're in danger zone. And look, Trae Young said this very plainly. I thought it was actually good, kudos to him for saying this. He's basically said the scouting report is out on the Hawks that they won't be able to get back. And I think that's right. I mean, I think they're going to have to adjust to that. I saw that some of the preseason as well. Quinn Snyder talked about being more urgent, generally speaking, in changing ends of the floor. Quinn talked about having the ball thrown over their heads too much, which I agree with. Also, I don't think it's like an issue of effort. Even Quinn said they need to kind of use their enthusiasm more effectively. And I would say that kind of applies to, it wasn't an energy problem. It just wasn't an execution problem. But they also, even in the half court, they weren't terrible, actually. If you look at the numbers, especially through the mid third quarter, the half court numbers were actually totally fine. It was that they could not do anything when it wasn't in a slow down half court situation defensively. So even on the glass, they allowed a 33% defensive rebound rate in this game. Offensive rebound rate in this game. That's pretty bad too. It wasn't totally disastrous, but the Raptors did have 19 second chance points. That's a pretty good number for them. There was not a whole lot of good defensively. They allowed 36 assists in this game. A lot of those on runouts. There just wasn't much to speak of. Now, like I said before, I don't change my opinion of the Hawks' defensive potential based on this game. Currently, the way they played tonight, it was a mess. It just was. And that, I've already seen same old Hawks defensively. Okay. I mean, they were better last year than they had been in the previous 4 or 5 years. That happened. I watched it throughout the season. And I believe the talent level is even better this year, but also rotationally, I had some issues. We'll talk about later on in this game. And execution-wise, even Jalen Johnson I thought was awesome in this game. Quinn even mentioned this him by name. He wasn't very good getting back. It was basically nobody good. No one's good, was good defensively in this game. Almost no one. So it was a mess. You don't want to flush it, but it was bad. And I still think simultaneously this team could be pretty good defensively, but it was not good tonight at all. Offensively, it was not as dire. It was a 104 offensive rating, which is pretty bad. There was some shot-making concerns in this game. Quinn talks about getting better shots. Somebody's trying to get better shots offensively. I agree with that. The process was not fantastic. But for me, in the first half, it was really ball security that was the major problem. The Hawks were having some turnover issues that led to some ugliness for the defense as well. And then after that, they stopped turning the ball over when the game was kind of more out of hand. But the shot making kind of went by the wayside there. Like, for example, Nickeil Alexander-Walker was 2 for 15 from the floor in this game. Nickeil isn't like a high-end shot maker, but like that's not going to happen very often, for example. The three new guys who were the impactful shot makers that they brought in, Nickeil was 2 of 15, Kennard was 2 of 7, and Porzingis was 5 of 12 from the field. So they were a combined, I think it was like 9 of 34 from the field in this game. Yeah, if that happens all the time, they're going to be in some trouble. But I wasn't particularly alarmed with the offense. The turnovers early on were a little bit clunky. There were some process failures, but they looked on offense more like a team that was not quite cohesive yet because they had not played together. That was a more like normal early season kind of funky weirdness offensive performance. Whereas defensively, they were just outright bad, if that makes sense. That's a point of nuance, but I think it's actually pretty relevant. So look, I'll stop for now. I have plenty more that I can get to. Of course, we have 82 games worth of stuff to talk about, but overall, there were not a lot of bright spots. I think there were a few. Jalen Johnson was probably one, the way he looked physically. The Congo played pretty well in this game, I thought. But other than that, like it was a mess. I'm not writing that off by any means. And I also want to tell you that I'm not suddenly going to think the Hawks are going to win 35 games this year. So it's something in the middle of those two things. If you hate that, welcome to the podcast, and we'll hopefully be able to coexist together as I try my best to, generally speaking, I say this all the time, but just as a final point, this first segment, my goal is to give you a comprehensive look at the Hawks. You may not agree with me all the time. I do work really hard to give you some context and opinions that I think have some nuance to them. I'm not a hot take guy. That's not what I'm going to be. You may not agree with me, and that's fine. I'll be wrong sometimes too, but I do want to give you the full picture, and that is the effort on this podcast all the time, especially on a night like tonight when things were not so good for the Hawks. All right, more to come in a second when it comes to how this game flowed, my more granular observations, and then at the end of the podcast, some player evaluations as well. But first, a word from our partners on the show. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, and no BS whatsoever. So you can say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. At Mint Mobile, they make it simple for you. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can actually bring your own phone with you if you want to and keep the same number and your same contacts as well. At Mint Mobile, I love the potential of just honestly being able to get the same quality service that you had before, but at a fraction of the price. The setup is very easy as well. Keep the same number if you want to, and then you're up and running in just minutes. Are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch now at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. One more time, that is mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Upfront payment for $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer only offer only for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow up to 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Let's be real. Making excuses does not solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or just happens to be everyone sometimes this way. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little bit more extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves instead. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor. It's 100% online with no awkward waiting rooms and no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment will ship to you discreetly and straight to your door. The process is fast, it's simple, and it's private. It's all handled as well by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter to you. Visit Rugiet, that's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA, and get 15% off your first order with them. That's Rugiet, RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget that code. It is LockedOnNBA, so that they know that we sent you to them. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, before I dive into the game once again, I wanted to give listeners and viewers of this podcast a heads up real quick. Some of you have already seen this now, and some audio listeners from the past might be familiar with this from last season. But during the Hawks season, there'll be an extra show in the Locked On Hawks audio and YouTube feeds after the game. It's called the Postcast, and from what I understand, it'll be hosted largely by Deshaun Tate and Tanisha Batiste. They did a show tonight, for example, on Wednesday evening. And this year, the Locked On Podcast Network is actually trying to do a little bit more of a bite-sized version that I'm told it's going to average 15 minutes or so after games. It'll be happening close to the final buzzer. So I will not be on that show. I will still be doing post-game media stuff and press conference stuff when it's happening. But I want to stress this. There's nothing less from me. I'm still doing the same 5-ish episodes per week that I've always done for almost a decade now. No changes there. All was normal with me. I was just some questions that people were already coming in on this, and I want to give everybody a heads up on this right out of the gate. So I hope you're already subscribed to all the Locked On podcast feeds, including Locked On Hawks on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And if you are, you will see that show in the feed starting today. So from what I understand, it will be there after every game unless something changes. And just so you know, still the same load for me, just some extra content for you as a listener and viewer of this podcast. Okay, back to the game itself. And early on, I would say it was not as bad as the final stuff indicated. In fact, for 2.5 quarters, it was a pretty competitive game. The first 6 points of the night were scored by the Hawks at the free throw line, which means of the season. They were scored there. They actually did a field goal for like 3 minutes. But as noted before, the ball security was pretty rough early on. They had 4 turnovers in the first 4.5 minutes. For me, they played a little bit too fast. They want to play fast. Keep that in mind. And I agree with that standpoint. But they were like on the verge of like frenetic early on, a little bit jumpy. And I think naturally so. Like it's just early in the year, it happens. But that's kind of what happened, I think, early in this game. Defensively, it was, not a disaster early on, I will say, at least in the half court. Rotationally, I want to dig in a little bit here. So a little bit of this was changed by Dyson Daniels getting 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes, and Dyson ended up playing with 5 fouls for like half of the game. Like he was in foul trouble the entire game, which certainly impacted some things. But that got Nickeil Alexander-Walker into the game early. No surprises there. By the way, Nickeil's played 187 straight games now. He's the 3rd longest active streak in the entire league. He's very durable. But then things kind of got a little bit interesting. So if you heard the show yesterday, I went on record, and I saw this coming a little bit, which is why I did this. I don't think Keaton Wallace should be playing rotation minutes for the Hawks when the team is healthy, as they are right now. I don't love that decision, generally speaking. I saw it coming with the way that he was used in the preseason. And it's not a shot at Keaton. Like, Keaton's done a really good job, like, earning a roster spot. I'm fine with Keaton being on the roster. He's been valuable the last couple of years. If you get an injury, it's totally fine. I don't think Keaton is a rotation-level guy, like a top 9 guy on a team that's trying to win 50 games this season. That's where I would draw the line. And it doesn't really, the need for him also doesn't really work for me. Like he was playing, for example, heavily with Luke Kennard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I don't really understand why you would need to do that. Keaton's not really a point guard in that way. Like he's more of a combo secondary guy. But for me, it comes down to this. By all indications, if you read between the lines, he's ahead of Vit Krejci, full stop, right now in the rotation. Now, I think Vit's a better player than Keaton. Defensively, Keaton is better, but I think offensively, Vit is pretty solidly better. But it's at least a minor surprise. I know that Quinn really likes Keaton. I get why. Keaton's a very solid guy, solid player, solid defender, etc. But I don't love that choice. That's one of the process things that kind of bugged me about this game is that I still think that's a good process decision, but that's just my opinion. There you go. Later in the first half, for example, we saw some laps that I thought were going to come. Trey and Kennard had some issues together defensively, as predicted many times this summer. We saw some Porzingis and Okongwu together. And the other rotation note, other than V did not play at all in this game, which isn't like shocking to me, but certainly is notable. Mo Gay also did not play in the competitive portion. He played in the fourth quarter when it was kind of all done. I am not shocked by this. I think Mo, to be clear, is a rotation player in the league. Like, I think his defense is already kind of really at that level. But I've been trying to share this on the pod the last couple of weeks. Like, the Hawks are comfortable, and I think they're going to be aggressive in playing basically 3 guys in the front court. Jalen, Porzingis, and Okongwu, and they're going to play a lot of minutes. Like tonight, even in a game that was not competitive for the last 10 minutes of the game, Jalen had 35 minutes, Porzingis 25 minutes, and Okongwu 30 minutes off the bench. I predicted yesterday on the show that Okongwu will play more this year than he played last year, which surprised people. But this is one of the reasons why. I've been hearing like they're going to play him a lot, and I think him with Porzingis, etc. So like Mo not playing, I don't love. I think you'll see Mo on nights when it's maybe a back-to-back or something like that, or there's any injuries. But I think when they're full strength, they're comfortable, as we saw tonight, playing 3 guys in the front court. Anyway, while we're here, by the way, one sicko note, because it's a sicko podcast, the Hawks had 4 guys inactive tonight. They only have to have 2 inactive. So there's 15 guys active on a game night. The Hawks have 17 guys on the roster. The 3 two-way guys being inactive is like pretty normal because there's a cap on how many times they can be active, so it's fine. If you're fully healthy, no big deal. But Nikola Juricic was inactive in this game for really no discernible reason. He's not hurt by any means, it doesn't seem. So that was a curious decision. And I think for me, it's more of a reminder that I think Juricic is like pretty clearly like one of the last guys, if not the last guy on the roster. I know he's not a standard contract and not a two-way, but like I think if you had to give Quinn truth serum on who he trusts the most or the least, I think it'd probably be a dead heat between Juricic and Eli Njai as to who's least likely to play minutes early in the year. Anyway, the Hawks were losing the entire game. That's the nature of the beast here. They pushed back a little bit, hit a couple threes after missing the first 4 or 5, but defensively, like Brandon Ingram was getting to his spots early in the game. The Hawks were allowing way too much penetration, which was a theme throughout, I thought, honestly. But they were back within 2 early in the early in the second quarter. They did allow a 15-5 run in the second to go down by 12. Keaton went to the locker room actually for a while after a hard fall. He hit his face on the court. It did not look good. I felt bad for Keaton. He got tripped as well, which is brutal. He was questionable return, did come back to the bench with chipped teeth, not even tooth. Teeth was what they said, multiple. That's painful, of course. He came back in. My other process bit that I want to make sure I get to quickly here is Zachary Richer played 5 of the first 17 and a half minutes of this game. For no injury. Dyson was in foul trouble, so that he should have even played more, not less. Keaton played more than he did for a while. Kennard played more than he did for a while. I didn't understand it. He played 11 minutes in the first half. That was a baffling choice. Zach, is still a young player, and young players sometimes frustrate coaches, but I thought that was crazy. And was that a reason why they lost? No. But just process-wise, again, process over results, I don't like that as a sign of things to come potentially, so hopefully that will not be the case moving forward. He did have a nice run at the end of the second quarter. Richer did with a pull-up 3 around the screen for Porzingis. They had a 9-0 run that actually included Porzingis hitting a 3 and a little celebration with he and Trey. They were back into things by halftime. But then the third quarter was a utter disaster. It really was. Offensively, there were a few nice moments. Jalen had a great pass across the court to a flare and Richer for a 3. Dyson had a great drive and finished left-handed over RJ Barrett. But other than a completely strange, borderline flagrant foul that Scotty Barnes was not called for against Jalen, that was kind of the extent of the offensive excitement. Defensively, it was a utter disaster in the third. I'll give you the numbers now. The Hawks allowed 45 points in the third quarter. The Raptors were 12 of 13 in the paint. They had 13 fast break points in the quarter. They were 16 of 18 at the free throw line in the quarter. And the Hawks had 150 defensive rating in the third. That all happened at once. And that's when the game got away from the Hawks. So Atlanta was in this game, like down like 7. I think they were down 7 with like 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And then it was an 18-2 run by the Raptors. Some live ball turnovers, fast break points, etc. And it was suddenly a 23-point game. And it's like, oh, this is kind of over. Like it happened very quickly. It kind of spiraled out of control in a hurry. There was a few like variance things as well. Like Richer had to leave the game with a limp of an ankle. He's actually sprained his ankle. He came back in, so hopefully he's going to be okay for Friday. But that happened. There was one where Richer had a wide open 3 in the corner. That was a great pass by Trey. That he just missed it. It happens sometimes. But the long rebound went straight into Jamal Shedd's chest, like in a full sprint the other way. And it's like that was like almost like on a tee for the Raptors for a layup. Granted, again, not an excuse, just more like observational. So it got out of hand. The fourth quarter, I have like no notes. Basically, it was a 26-4 overall run, late third, early fourth, and the game was just over at that point. And the Hawks, I think, probably played their guys too much in the fourth, honestly, because it was over from like the 10-minute mark on, basically. All right. That's all I have on the ins and outs of this game. I will have more stuff, I promise you, in the future on process stuff if things continue to go that route. In a second, I will dive into my player evaluations from this contest and a brief look ahead to the weekend. But first, a word from our partners on the show. When I found out Skips was making underwear for men, I was actually and genuinely intrigued. I've heard a lot about their quality from friends and family in the past, and I had to give it a try for myself. Let me tell you, it's definitely living up to the hype. People have issues with their underwear sometimes when it comes to fit or comfort or just finding the right style that for whatever they want in their own life. And Skims changes all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style in mind. For example, the 5-inch stretch boxers briefs have rave reviews across the board. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with you. They never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day. Whether you're working out or running errands or just living your life, they are the most comfortable and reliable underwear available anywhere. Plus, the lightweight material actually feels amazing in any situation across the board as well. You can shop Skims now at Skims Men's. It's skims.com/lockedonnba and as well as in Skims stores. Also, let them know that we sent you to them. As you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the menu that drops down and follows from there. One more time, the place to go in the online space is skims.com/lockedonnba. All right, so the player evaluations in this contest. It was basically a 9-man rotation. Mo Gay played only in the fourth quarter. It was only garbage time. Mo came in, looked fine, but not much to add there other than I like to see Mo play a little bit more, but we'll leave it there for now. Keaton Wallace ended up not playing much in the second half because, of course, he had the hard fall, but played 9 minutes, was actually minus 11. I'm sure it will sound like I'm picking on Keaton, and I'm not. I don't think Keaton should play. I don't think he was a disaster, but offensively, you could definitely just see the limitations. He was not being guarded in a way that they kind of need a perimeter player to be guarded some, especially with his, defensively, he's fine for sure. But offensively, he's a little bit clunky in some of those lineups. And I think if you're going to play him with Alexander Walker and Kennard, I think I'd rather just have Veit on the floor for the shooting, etc. One of the brighter spots in the game was Okongwu, who played 30 minutes off the bench, 18 points, 6 rebounds, had an assist. Was minus 19. I don't think he was great. I think defensively, it was not his best night in the world, but he was at least efficient around the rim and productive. So that was a brighter spot than most guys. Luke Kennard. So I thought Luke was very bad in this game. Now, I also think Luke Kennard can help the Hawks and will help the Hawks. I think he's an underrated player with the ball in his hands, for example. But a couple things. For one, he took some shots in the fourth quarter, which were probably helpful, but it's always been a Luke Kennard thing. He doesn't shoot enough. And that was definitely the case in the first 2.5 quarters of this game. Just too many times where it's hey, you got to shoot that. Hopefully more of that will happen. I know literally today at shoot around, he talked about that on the record. So they're encouraging him to shoot more. He's got to shoot more. And then defensively, it was pretty rough. Now that is to be expected. He's not going to be a great defender, but I think it was worse than I thought it was going to be today. It's one game. He's an 8-year veteran. I'm not terribly worried about it, but I think he was part of the problem in this game. And then Alexander Walker, actually was a game best for the Hawks, -2. So they were fine in his minutes, but Nickeil was 1 of 10 on 2s and 1 of 5 on 3s in the game. He was a little bit too aggressive. Now, something about Nickeil that actually I heard from people that covered him in Minnesota and saw that on film as well, is that when he's off the dribble, he tends to take some aggressive, probably too aggressive shots, from 2-point range. And that definitely happened in this game. I think you don't want to rein it in too much because you want it to be aggressive and assertive, but it was a little bit too aggressive shot selection wise in this game from Nickeil. He also missed them all, which won't always happen, but it was an uneven effort for sure from him off the bench. To the starters in this game, Dyson just couldn't stay on the floor. The foul trouble was weird. I quipped during the game that he had 4 fouls in 10 minutes. And I think he didn't commit a foul on any of those. The 5th foul was a foul. I think maybe one of the other ones, but out of the first 5, I don't think that more than 2 were fouls, but it happens sometimes. Bad beat, kind of just a lost night for Dyson. He was fine when he was out there, generally speaking. Porzingis made his threes. He had 4 threes in the game, but was not crisp. I think he was one of the guys where I think it was apparent he's just not quite comfortable yet getting to his spots defensively, even some breakdowns, getting back on defense, etc. Had 20 points, so it wasn't like he was a disaster, but wasn't fully formed Porzingis just yet. Jalen Johnson was one of the bright spots on offense. 22 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds for Jalen. Looked good offensively. Defensively, not his best work. That was the case for everyone in this game. Richeche, 16 points in 21 minutes. Looked good to me. Hopefully the ankle is fine, but was aggressive, made some shots, got to the rim, was one of the more positive guys. Trey, 22 points on 22 possessions, which is not incredible, nor is it bad efficiency. 5 assists, 2 turnovers. Trey's defense was not great in this game, especially in the second half when it was kind of got out of hand. He was not particularly dialed in, I didn't think, after halftime. And only shot 1 of 7 on 3s. That'll happen sometimes. Got to the line 13 times. It was not a good Trey game, but it was not out of line with the rest of the team, I would say. One more note on Porzingis before I forget to say this. There was a really good piece that I recommend people read from Fred Katz of The Athletic today about Porzingis' illness from last year. It kind of digs into what he actually was diagnosed with, which is POTS, a condition that actually can basically mess with a patient's heart rate in a lot of different ways. And Porzingis is now sharing that he's they're good with it. They're comfortable managing it. no medication. They just want to kind of note that, and like it's an informative read, so read that for sure. He looks fine physically, which is good, but I want to at least plug that from Fred, a good read there, and leave it there for now. Again, not light the game on fire, but no one was incredible. I think Jalen offensively was probably the closest thing to really good in this game for the Hawks, but in general, a below average performance, and they'll have to be better when they're back on the court, and that's a good time to look ahead briefly to the games over the weekend. So yesterday, I said it would be a good idea for the Hawks to win tonight because they have a tough game on Friday and Saturday. Of course, they lost tonight. They go to Orlando on Friday. Now, the Magic won tonight by 4 points at home against Miami without Tyler Hero. I saw part of this. They didn't look great to me. I'm not super high on Orlando this year, but they are still good. And then defensively, like they're obviously been good for a long time. They will also play very physically, and the Hawks and Magic have played some barn burners the last couple of years. That'll be an interesting measuring stick for the Hawks on Friday, but a tough test for sure. And then after that, they come home on Saturday, back-to-back with travel, to play the Thunder. And the Thunder had a double overtime game on Wednesday, but they ended up winning in the end. And, of course, they're the reigning champs. They're really good. That's a tough test, too. So, nothing's going to be easy for the Hawks, I will say. Also, one note here. Porzingis did not play both ends of a back-to-back all year last year in Boston. In fact, in his entire Boston tenure, he played 2 back-to-backs. Now, the Hawks have not said that he will sit, nor have they said that he will play. We'll see on that. We won't know till at least Thursday night about Friday's game, and then Friday night or Saturday morning about Saturday's game. But that's something to look at. Also, Richard's ankle, also, Keaton's face, etc. There's some injury-ish stuff. There was nothing to report for this game, but 2 good tests. And look, if the Hawks lose on Friday, it's going to be the sky is falling. I get that too. I would hope they look better than they did tonight as a small thing, if nothing else. And also as a PSA, it's an earlier game. It's a 7:00 game on Friday. Don't miss tip-off if you're dialed in. Now, barring big news, the next show that I will do will probably be Friday after the game because I have already done, this is my 5th episode of the week already on Thursday morning. So I'll be back Friday night, but I'll have shows on Friday night and Saturday night, and then we'll dive into next week as well. And some travel coming up, all that fun stuff. We'll be digging in wall to wall. If you are a new listener, please do me a solid and subscribe to Locked On Hawks anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. If you're a recurring listener, thank you for being here. Hopefully you're already subscribed, but tell your friends about the show as well. You can follow me on social media. Locked On Hawks account is at Locked On Hawks on Twitter/X. I am there at BT Rowland. Also, you can follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland, and you can also follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, a frustrating night at the office, to be sure. Hopefully not an indicator of things to come if you are a Hawks fan. Stay tuned. We'll have plenty more to come later on this week, and we'll see you all next time.